Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a lecture on apocalyptic eschatology and the book of Daniel. We're almost at the end, and this is the last lecture probably that you'll have to watch, hear of me and hear from me. It's at the end of the semester, and how appropriate is it that we are looking at apocalyptic eschatology and the book of Daniel. First off, let's start with a couple of terms. Apocalyptic comes from the word apocalypsis, the Greek word for revelation. Apocalypsis means to uncover or to reveal or to show, right? And so the seer in these apocalyptic works is seeing what is hidden. It's revealed to him. And it's done in the end of times. Eschatology. Eschatos in Greek means end. And logos, of course, you know, means the study of. So eschatology is the study of the end of times. You put these two terms together and you've got a mindset, a philosophy, apocalyptic eschatology. This is a community that is suffering some sort of persecution, usually from an outside oppressor. And they're asking God, why is it that good people experience bad things? Kind of that Job question, why is it that we're suffering this? It's wisdom in a way, but it's moving beyond wisdom. It's moving beyond that theodicy question because it has an answer to that question. The answer is that there's a divine plan. In spite of the appearances of the present evil age, everything is about to come to an end. And God will judge the wicked and vindicate those who are steadfast. The present evil order will come to an end, and there will be a new era of peace and prosperity, and that gives hope to communities that are suffering persecution. It's very profoundly hopeful literature, although also frighteningly destructive because the oppressors have to be put down. But is an explanation of why all these terrible things are happening to good people. It produces a literature starting in the Second Temple period and lasting into the New Testament period. And we have a whole bunch of these documents. So we have Daniel and Revelation that are historical apocalypses. You see the subgenres down here. That are historical apocalypses that make it into the Old Testament and New Testament. But you have a whole bunch of these other texts in the pseudepigrapha, the Book of Watchers, 1st and 2nd Enoch, 4th Ezra, 2nd Baruch, Jubilees, all of these texts that didn't make it into the canon, but are nevertheless apocalyptic. They're very Jewish or Christian. And they have a certain genre. So the definition of apocalyptic literature is a narrative genre of revelatory literature in which a revelation discloses transcendent realities about the end of times. And often this otherworldly figure gets the revelation. For Daniel has this tremendous gift that he can read dreams, and then he has these dreams. And it's true also with John. He has visions, and he's telling the audience his visions. Now, some of these have an otherworldly journey, like 1st and 2nd Enoch or the Book of Watchers. The seer is taken up into heaven, and they're shown everything they're just given a tour, basically, of the heavens. And over here are the armies that are being lined up to destroy the oppressors, and over here's the hailstorm and the windstorm and the thunder and the everything that's going to come down, the lightning, everything that's going to wipe out the oppressors. That's all lined up ready, and the seer gets to see all these things, and then they come back and they tell the people at the end of times, have hope. You know, there's hope, right? There's a future. Daniel in Revelation, the seer has a vision, and then he tells the vision. And what's really cool about Daniel and Revelation is they engage in two different kinds of predictions. There is what we are calling, it's not really prophecy, but what scholars call ex eventu prediction or ex eventu prophecy. That's a really cool trick that you can do with these works. Daniel's written in the 2nd century to a community that is experiencing extreme persecution, but the character Daniel is set way back in the 6th century in Babylon in exile. And that allows the author to do some really cool things. Because Daniel is set back in the past, he can have prescience about the future, which is the past of the narrative of the audience itself, the historical audience. It's like me. If I were to write a story about a seer back in the revolutionary times of America during George Washington's lifetime, I can have him predict all kinds of cool things that have happened. He can predict the Civil War. I mean, those are not cool things, but the Civil War, the First World War, the Second World War, Vietnam, whatever. Right? He can predict all of these different kingdoms, the fallings, and all of these different characters that come out. But it's really my imagination, my writing that is able to periodize, able to give you a sense of history in which this seer sees the future, but it's my past. At some point, though, I get up to my present, and I've got to start predicting the eschatological period myself. What's going to happen? There's going to be judgment. There's going to be salvation, retribution. I'm seeing all this stuff going to happen, but it's where we go from the steady sort of understanding of the different kingdoms to eschatological prediction, where we can't align that to any history. That's really useful because then we can date these books very precisely. Daniel probably was completed around 164. Why can we date it so closely? Because he goes up into the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes and his destruction, right? And Antiochus Epiphanes was brought down by the Hasmoneans around 164. We're able to tag Daniel very closely to that date. We're not able to date any Old Testament text as closely as we are able to date Daniel. And it's true with Revelation. We can date them very closely because we can see where ex eventu prophecy ends and where sort of eschatological prediction starts. So Daniel is the oldest, the latest of the Old Testament works, the youngest. It has older traditions, maybe even going back. Some of the wisdom stuff might go back to the Babylonian exile. But really the visions are probably authored around 164. Now, Apocalyptic itself is written in reaction to crisis. It doesn't have to be persecution like under Antiochus Epiphanes. Sometimes it is. But the function is to provide consolation or to provide an audience a course of action. To give them a sense that if they stay close to God, in spite of everything that's happening, they're going to be an end-time reward. And it engages in fantastic imagery and symbols and numerical patterns and riddles and coded language. It's very powerful. It's very moving. I've read Revelation, the Revelation of the New Jerusalem with congregations in mourning, and they appreciate it. They find it very powerful. These images, these symbols, they speak to us in ways that perhaps normal language can't. There's another function for that, the numerical patterns and riddles and coded language. If the text falls into the hands of the oppressor, they don't know what to make of it. So they can't read it. They can read it, but they don't understand what it means. But the community they can understand what it means. So that's really cool in terms of what these texts can do. Like I said, Daniel is the oldest Old Testament, or newest Old Testament work, the most recent. If you divide Daniel into two pieces, you have the court tales in chapters 1 through 6. They're very narrative in nature. They have the great stories of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. You have Daniel and the writing on the wall, and him being able to tell these. It's great stuff. It's fun stuff. It's wonderful to read with children because it's very gentle. He does have some visions, but it's pretty, for the most part, gentle. When you get into chapter 7, it gets wild. It's really psychotic in a way, just crazy. And it's really very first-person visions. And 7 through 12 is just wild stuff. But nice thing about Daniel is he does give you the code. So he not only tells you the vision, but then explains what they are. Right? So if you look at some of these visions, they are decoded. So for example, in Daniel 7, which we're going to read here in a second, the first beast that is described, the lion, correlates to Babylon. The second, the bear, to Medea. The leopard to Persia. The iron beast to Alexander the Great. And the 10 horns to Alexander's successors. And the little horn that supplants all the other 10, that's Antiochus Epiphanes. So you have this sort of connection, right? And so in each of these visions, whether in Daniel 7 or Daniel 8 or in the description of the statue that's built, in Babylon in Daniel 2, you have this connection between these different symbols and these different empires. That's ex eventu prophecy. At some point in Daniel 7, of course, he goes into messianic description. He goes into a future that is not quite there yet. And then, so we can tell, that's how we can sort of date, because it shows the destruction of Antiochus Epiphanes, the little horn, and then the future sort of goes into this messianic prediction. Let's take a look at Daniel 7 quickly here, just to get a sense for it. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. And the four great beasts, and these are the beasts that I was just talking about, came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. That lion, of course, is Babylon, right? Then as I watched it, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being. And a human mind was given to it. Another beast appeared, a second one, that looked like a bear. Well, that's Medea, right? It was raised up on one side, had 3 tusks in its mouth and among its teeth, and was told, devour many bodies. After this I watched another appeared like a leopard, right? And the leopard corresponds to Persia. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong, like Alexander the Great, right? This is Alexander. Had great iron teeth. Alexander used iron. He brought in the great iron weapons, and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns, right? The end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared. These 10 horns are Alexander's successors, right? Another horn appeared, a little one coming up among them. That's Antiochus Epiphanes, to make room for it. 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn, and a mouth speaking arrogantly. And here now we have the switch from ex eventu prophecy here to apocalyptic prediction. As I watched, thrones were set in place, and an ancient one took his throne. His clothing was white as snow. Look at this imagery. And the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and its wheels were burning fire, and a stream of fire issued and flowed out from his presence. Well, this very regal imagery, isn't it? It's divine imagery, the fire and the white. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were open. This is not going to be good for Antiochus. I watched them because of the noise of the arrogant words that little horn was speaking. And as I watched, the beast was put to death and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And that's really interesting, right? This is apocalyptic. You've got to live a little bit longer. There's a little bit more time you have to suffer, but it's about over. A season and a time. As I watched in the night visions, I saw one like, and here I would translate, Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, nations, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall never be destroyed. That's the Davidic promise, right? This is the Messiah, the promised Messiah, who will have an eternal dominion. So here we make it to Daniel, where we make it to the promised Messiah, the one who's given dominion, who will bring down the oppressor, and who will establish a kingdom in which those who worship the Ancient of Days will be rewarded and protected in everlasting ways. Apocalyptic literature is meant to provide solace and hope. It's scary stuff, but it's not meant to scare us. It's meant to give us a sense that there is a future, there is a hope, And God is in control in spite of everything, all the appearances to the contrary. God is in control. God will make good things happen. I wish you all the best, and I hope you've enjoyed this lecture. And I hope you are blessed to a certain degree by a little bit of understanding of how apocalyptic literature in Daniel works.